Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. AIGA Atlanta Insider is a monthly in-house interview series featuring various designers and creative leaders working around Atlanta. My name is Meg Link. I am a freelance designer and a member of AIGA's in-house committee. I will be your host today, and Courtney Maka is the co-host. She will be leading on tech.
Hey everyone, I'm also on the in-house committee, and I am currently working in-house as a senior designer at CBRE Atlanta up in Buckhead, and I'm super stoked to be here with all of you today.
Well, here's the agenda for the hour. So first, we've done our introductions, and then Amy Mangan from the Creative Group will update us on Impulsive Design in Atlanta with a Market Minute. Then we'll jump over to our conversation with Jay Musselwhite from FLEETCOR and leave time toward the end of the hour for a Q&A. So please leave your questions in the chat or the Q&A feature. The Insider is a team effort, and we can't do it without the help of the AIGA in-house committee. You will see these faces over the next few months as we cycle through different hosts. And with that, I'm passing it over to Amy Mangan from the Creative Group.
Thanks, Meg. Hey guys, I'm Amy with the Creative Group. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on here in Atlanta specifically, and then also give you kind of an overview of what we're seeing on a national level with the market as well. But I'm happy to tell you some things are kind of turning around, looking a bit more positive. I had been in previous months talking to you a lot about the prior 3 months period. So like from the beginning of lockdown till 3 months in. This month, I really just took a snapshot of the past month since our last meeting. So in Atlanta, who's working through the Creative Group in new jobs, new placements over the last month for both contract as well as full-time roles? Graphic designers top the list, so that's good news. That had sort of fallen off the list during much of our time spent, at home. So really happy to see that go back up, followed closely by production coordinator, production artists. We're still seeing a heavy influx of motion design and web content writing jobs. And then lastly, we're also seeing traffic coordinators and marketing assistants quite a bit still. A lot of companies, especially when they don't have a lot of budget to work with, are looking for potentially more junior folks who can kind of wear a lot of hats and do a lot of different functions on the team. On a national level, the top 5 industries that we're hiring all of TCG in the US top the list with advertising agencies. Now that is definitely small to mid-size. We're not seeing a lot of jobs still coming out of the big 4. Marketing consulting firms has remained busy throughout the pandemic. Software publishing firms, office administrative companies, and then kind of unsurprisingly, colleges and universities, and a little bit further down in the list was regular school districts as well. So those companies are hiring lots of digital folks in order to get prepared for this either hybrid or fully virtual year that they're about to have. And then on the next page, got some info that is also good news for designers, especially folks who've got some digital in their background. Web designers the unemployment rate is below 3% at this point, which is really good. The national unemployment rate overall is 11+% right now. We would normally consider anywhere between 4 and 5% to be full employment. So being under 3, that's a good thing. There's also some other analytics there as well. And I've got other specifics on various various skill sets. So if you have a question about your own personal skill set, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share what that looks like with you. On the next slide, Twilio puts out a report every year, and I think it's very interesting this year, some of the data that was coming out of it. So the pie chart that I made, I'm a designer, just kidding. I'm not. On the right is about half of the people that were filling out the survey said that their company sped up their digital transformation by 1 to 4 years. That's pretty average. I'd say a lot of companies can probably relate to that. I was surprised, however, to find that almost 30% said it was more like 5 to 9 years. And then 21% said it was more like 10 to 24 years. That was very surprising. I don't know if anybody in your companies can relate to that. If we're looking at the left side in that black box, essentially, this is showing us what barriers were removed, what obstacles were removed, allowing that digital transformation to shift so rapidly when in fact people were more like 5 to 25 years out in a lot of cases. And one of those in the bottom left corner, reluctance to replace legacy software, 35% of respondents said that had previously been their obstacle. And that's been removed because there was no choice ultimately. Same thing with lack of clear strategy and getting executive approval. In many cases, executive approval came quickly and with gusto to try to get the company back on track and able to produce. And then about almost 80% of respondents to this Twilio survey said that they actually received a budget increase for digital transformation. So that is good to see, and a lot of what we've been seeing here in Atlanta is echoed in that as well. And then lastly, there was an event that has already occurred, but it's been recorded. In our beautiful digital age, we can always catch up on things when we have time. So TCG and AIGA are national partners. We have been for a very long time. This is a webinar, How to Ace the Virtual Interview, that was done with our executive director, Diane Domeyer. She's worked at Robert Half for 25 plus years and has worked with AIGA for probably the last 10 or so. She has fantastic input on how to present yourself in the interview, but also I would say it's great for job seekers. Absolutely, that's who it's geared towards. But if you're a hiring manager or you're in any way involved in the hiring process in our new virtual hiring world, definitely take a peek at this webinar and share it with your friends who are job seekers, even if they're not designers. It's definitely slanted for designers, but I think there are great tips in there that are relevant to anybody who's interviewing virtually right now. All the way from what background should you use on a first round interview to the one that you're going to use on the third round interview as they get to know you. So I watched it. I thought it was great tips and a lot of interesting stuff. I know it's hard to grab a link from here, obviously. So if you didn't write fast enough, definitely just shoot me a message on LinkedIn and I can send you the link directly. Or if you want any info on the Twilio Report or any other unemployment facts for that matter, feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to share with you whatever you might need. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Meg.
Thanks, Amy. That sounds like a really great webinar. I'll be sure to check it out. Well, today we're proud to introduce Jay Musselwhite. Jay has over 20 years experience across agency and internal creative groups with a diverse background in design, brand experience, UX UI, video, and digital marketing. He has built internal teams that handle marketing and creative across both B2B and B2C. He's managed national campaigns and served as internal sales forces with deep knowledge in digital design and video production. He holds a BFA in graphic design from Auburn University and lives in Marietta. Jay, thanks for spending your lunch hour with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, like you mentioned, I graduated Auburn. I came to Atlanta right after graduation, worked for a couple small agencies, did some freelance. I actually did a lot of work for TCG. Got to work on the team that rebranded SunTrust back in 2006, and now they're moving again to Truist. Little NASCAR, little Turner Interactive, in-house at Kimberly-Clark, more freelance. Then had a 4-year stint at the Yellow Pages, and now I'm at FLEETCOR. So a lot of varied positions.
It sounds like you've had a lot of really cool experiences. What exactly attracted you to design?
I've always been, that creative type. So I've always made stuff, whether it's painting or drawing when I was a little kid and in my teens. I actually went to Auburn for their School of Architecture. And, I didn't do so well. I switched to graphic design. And back then graphic design was not a big thing like it is today. So it was a lot of art classes, and the final year they gave us one of those Macs, and that was pretty much the extent of graphic design. But yeah, I liked it.
I know you're very passionate about branding. Can you tell us a few of the branding projects you've worked on?
Yeah, you want to start with YP? I think that's probably the most notable one. We did, for those that don't know YP was the Yellow Pages, and we renamed it to YP simply because the Yellow Pages is an unknownable or unownable brand, so it can't be registered. It's a generic term, so we had to come up with a new name. So we worked with Interbrand in New York. I was very fortunate to work with probably one of the best creative directors I've ever worked with. His name is Forrest Young. But at the time we were rebranding, Yellow Pages was a top 10 web property, and I'm talking about visitors per year, top 10 website. People go there to to find plumbers and electricians and everything that you would think the Yellow Pages would offer in the old style book in this new digital experience. So the goal was at the same time renaming the brand, but how do we take kind of an old stodgy name and modernize it, make it youthful, really connect with the consumer, and that's what we did here. There's an interesting story about the yellow line underneath YP. We dug into the customer profiles, and we're starting to kind of understand who's using the Yellow Pages, and what we found was we called them our household CEOs, and these were the people, often wives who ran the books and the finances for the home, made the decisions about where to send their kids to school. They were scheduling home repairs or home remodels, or all of those businesses that were central to YP. So we called those people the household CEOs, and what we found was that they would make a lot of lists. So one of the things that when you make a list and you scratch off something on your list, there's a it's a nice feeling to get something off your list. And so that act of crossing out something on your list became that yellow line. So even though it wasn't readily apparent in the branding or to a layperson looking at the logo, it meant something to us internally, and it became just a core expression that we used throughout the design. So the yellow line was always associated with doing and getting things done. It was always active. It was always used purposefully. So that element you see throughout the brand made that brand stronger, and it was connected with something that the that the customer was doing already. So looking for that, those connections in a brand, or what sort of draws me to it. I love exploring stuff like that.
That's a great story. I never knew that about YP.
Yeah, it's good.
So after you joined YP, you went over to FLEETCOR. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey over to FLEETCOR?
Yeah. So I've worked with some great people over the years. One of my mentors is Alex Kaminsky. He's a big idea guy. He's the one that sort of came up with ESPN News, Turner Classic Movies. There's a lot of things that he's done. Just a great guy. He joined FLEETCOR, and at the time that he joined, early last year, I believe, FLEETCOR did not have a marketing department per se. Things were still done, by different departments, and there was a lot of bifurcation and sort of disjointed design and marketing. So he was brought on board, and then he brought me on to lead the creative part of that. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the creative team at FLEETCOR?
So right now it's just me and what I can cobble together through budgets and whatnot. So a lot of freelancers. We have a few agencies. It just depends on the need. So we definitely rely on outside resources to kind of do the things that we need to do.
And what do you look for in the people that you work with from the freelance agencies or agencies?
Well, I mean, if it's an agency, and these are, they're more difficult to find these days, but an agency is kind of like a tool. It's meant for one purpose. So you'll find agencies that are good at digital, or you'll find agencies that are good at just strong in design. Others for a variety of different skill sets. So it's hard to find an agency that kind of does it all, unless you have a Mac Daddy budget. You're not going to get that. So it's helpful to kind of pick and choose which agencies you want to bring in. And then supplement that with freelancers. The people that bring on, they've got to have a passion for creating stuff. I've found in the even the people that I've hired at YP or previous to that, it's hard to. If a person looks good on paper, that doesn't always translate into good performance. And as far as managers go, they have personalities too, so they look for people that are going to augment them or fill in the gaps where maybe they're not as good. But one thing that I know for certain is all the really good designers that I've worked with, that I've had underneath me, had some outside passion. And whether it was painting or sculpture or music or something, there's that creative energy that's necessary to do what we do. You've got to have that muscle constantly going, otherwise it atrophies, and it just you're not able to perform at the level that you need to. Is that kind of a long way of answering your question?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like as a creative, we have so much energy that we're trying to put out there and like channel it somewhere. And if you just keep doing the same thing, it just burns you out. You got to find another outlet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, burnout is one of the things that I'm always on the watch for, at least myself, because it's very easy to just, grind and grind and grind and create and make and make and make. You gotta step back and do other things. But whether that's, just get outside for some people, for me at least, is working on other creative stuff, just going to do what I want to do, that that I have total control over, that I don't have to answer to anybody about, right? So it's important to have that outlet. Absolutely.
So basically, well, going back to FLEETCOR for a moment, being a
Yeah.
one-person team, what is that like? Is it really hard staying inspired and just keeping your creative drive going?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's probably one of the most challenging roles I've been in. Not only am I doing the work, um, but then I have to step back and I have to work with various people across the company who have different priorities and different personalities, and work on that strategic level, and then go do design. And those sometimes take two separate headspaces. So it's sometimes a challenge to stay focused and just buy yourself the time to do the work. Yeah.
Are there any tools or software that you would suggest to like help you organize your time and do the work at FLEETCOR?
Yes. FLEETCOR is an odd bird. There are quite many systems that different folks use across the company. I like Jira, although to be quite frank, I don't use it as much as I probably should. And then that goes back to that, just challenge of being, solo internally. Be absolutely wonderful to have a dedicated creative project manager to run things like that. But I don't have that right now. Little things I like. I have an iPad Pro. I don't know if you guys have an iPad, but go get Create Pro. It's awesome. It's like this never-ending whiteboard, and it's got all kinds of little plugins and whatever. And if you've got the little stylus, you can just sketch and draw and make notes and whatnot. And I like the fact that you can just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and get more whiteboard. And I've made like flow charts that just keep going down all the way down, like 10 iPads worth of scrolling. So it's nice. It's good for just kind of getting those juices going and free forming it.
That's awesome. The iPad's definitely a game changer. Courtney and I have had many discussions about it.
Yeah, you use it too? Yeah. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, shameless plug for Create Pro. Go download it. Absolutely.
I had a quick question to cycle back to your experience at FLEETCOR. So I know there's probably a lot of folks on this call who also work solo in-house, where they're the only one. What advice do you have for them? So you're balancing all these, like you're wearing every hat in the building. So what advice do you have other people in your same position?
I mean, if especially, to junior designers or mid-level designers, I would say show your value, right? Always try to understand the business side of things. So, let's be honest, every place we work is there for a specific business purpose. They're there to make a profit. So, having conversations with, your finance guy or the product guy, and really trying to understand where the business is moving, and getting yourself acclimated to what makes that business tick, will help you be a better designer, because then you can, if a project comes in, you'll be able to, not just accept the project at face value. You'll have that added perspective of where the business is going. And if you see something while you're working, that you say, well, maybe if they did it this way, it might be better. So, always be looking for some of those deeper business themes. Yeah, so don't be afraid to show your value by digging in and knowing other parts of the business. Like, just kind of immerse yourself in it and realize that your role is just one of many others, and you're there to work as a team. So yeah, understand those things, especially if they're not, if they're difficult for you, or like me, I'm not good at finance or data. I mean, if you send me an Excel doc, my eyes glaze over. But I've sat in Excel docs for days, looking through data and trying to pull out insights, and then run to the data people. Look what I found! Look what I found! And then it's just yeah, get curious about the business and what makes it tick.
So
That's really great advice. Yeah, I know from my experience, I know nothing about data and Excel, so that's definitely one of my areas is struggling. I know that you've built teams from ground up at both FLEETCOR and YP. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and your challenges there?
Yeah, let's talk about YP. YP was a great job. It's really probably one of my first times just building a team up to the level that it did at its height. I think there were 15 or 16 people underneath me when I first came on. There was a kind of a hodgepodge of different people across the company. There were some folks that were kind of like a pseudo creative services, and they also did ads for the book. So I adopted some of those people. Some of them just were phenomenal and worked really well. So I was able to kind of cherry pick out of that, and then bring on some other designers and copywriters. Had a video guy. We had a person that managed all of the brand IP work. Couple of developers, digital designers. So you name it, we had a good array of folks. But it wasn't an easy process, and it goes back to that point about showing value. Like, you start with, one or two people, and then you work with them to show their value. And you can go to your bosses and say things like, I'll give you an example, like, you're spending, 15 grand a month at this agency. Well, if I bring this in-house, well, that person will be better connected to the business, more in tune with what's going on, and I can get it cheaper. And I've already shown that before, so let's do that. And so, little by little, you kind of build up your team and build up your ability to deliver, good work, because ultimately that's what it's about.
So we actually have a question in the chat that's relevant to what you're talking about right now. Someone asked if you think the dream is for FLEETCOR to eventually expand and grow a team, kind of how you did at YP. Obviously, it's a different company.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would love to have a team underneath me. I mean, I would love to be able to take all of those outside resources that we're dependent on and bring them internal. You know, so I fight that fight a lot. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose those, but that's just kind of the nature of it. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, having people internally gives you a lot more flexibility. You're able to get a lot more done. If people are, you know, internal, they're more connected with, you know, the business side of things. You can be in meetings. They understand where the business needs to go. You know, they can be a little bit more intuitive about what projects may be coming down the pike. So, you know, you're able to build time for yourself by being a little bit more forward thinking. So that's what that internal team gives you.
And when it comes to FLEETCOR specifically, this kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier with different projects you've done. Do you have an example of a project where you were able to really show your value that you could share with us, perhaps?
Yeah, let's talk about Fuelman. So Fuelman. I'm looking at my cheat sheet here, so I wrote some notes. So those of you that are not familiar with Fuelman is it's a fuel card. It works just like a credit card or a debit card or whatnot, but it's specifically made for businesses that rely on vehicles to get things done. So think, you know, like your plumbing companies that have a fleet of trucks, or you know, your truckers or your transport guys or delivery guys, you name it. Those businesses that have those fleets of vehicles most oftentimes use fuel cards, and it's just a fancy term for a credit card that has a bunch of controls on the back end to prevent drivers from, you know, going to Best Buy and getting a camera instead of putting gas in the truck. So, you know, there's controls that where they can only pump at a certain time at a certain station and a certain amount. So it's just a way for the business owner to control that expense.
And this is the team that you work on specifically in FLEETCOR, or?
No, so Fuelman is one of the brands that we have. I work for North American Fuel, which is a subsidiary. Is that the right way? I don't know. A division of FLEETCOR. So we have a few different products that we work on. But Fuelman is probably the oldest of the brands. It's definitely one. It's the one that kind of started the whole FLEETCOR thing. Awesome thing about Fuelman is it has a great legacy history. And when we were, you know, looking at reworking the brand, and up until that point, it's just like I mentioned before, just kind of a hodgepodge of different assets with no real, you know, tie-in or theme or design to it. But we got to looking at the history of it, and there's a lot of rich history. We found that people collect these old signs that used to be in front of gas stations, that the gas stations that would accept the Fuelman card, you know, back in the 80s, they had these signs that would hang on the gas station. So that these things go for top dollar on eBay or collection sites or whatever. So there was a lot of great history there, and they had sort of downplayed this. We call him Pumphrey, this little drawing of the pump man, but they had sort of downplayed that. So I resurrected that. That became a little bug that we use on all the advertising, on the cards. We use them on the cards. Fuelman has been around since 1985. There's this definite rich history to it, and thinking about just the brand in general. The people who use Fuelman are just they're salt of the earth people. They are they like things straightforward, no BS sort of folks, right? So the brand kind of combines the aspects of this kind of retro legacy feel with just some great short messaging, very strong, very impactful, and then we have this moniker called I Am Fuelman, which kind of links to one of those 5 human truths. And one of the strongest is the need to belong. So oftentimes you find our customers, they associate themselves with regional aspects. So Fuelman is big in the South and the Midwest. So like that people are often drawn to like schools, or they're loyal to their football team or their town, or the way their dad did things, and there's a very need to belong in that. So that moniker I Am Fuelman just kind of solidifies that baseline human emotion. And my very strong belief is that a brand should be emotive. I mean, it should be, kind of like art. It should make you feel something. And if it doesn't make you feel anything, then it's not a strong brand. You definitely have to recognize that people buy on emotion. They make decisions on emotion. So, on top of all of the other things that go into design, the kind of the pinnacle of the brand should be this emotive feel that's connected to the customer.
That leads to a follow-up question about when you're presenting new ideas, how do you really back up the decisions and just stand behind your design?
Like on the day-to-day stuff, it helps to have those strong brand guidelines. Oftentimes I will speak of the brand as a third person. So, the brand wouldn't want to do that, or the brand wouldn't do that, right? I hear you, and I'm all for making things, rich and complicated, but the Fuelman brand is about simplicity. So if the brand were a person, then it would not do that, right? And brands are a lot like people. Building brands are, you get to just like every other individual, you have your preferences, your likes, your dislikes. You wear plaid and you hate solids, or you wear your hair long, or you have tattoos, or whatever your personal preferences are. Translate that to a brand, and that's kind of my outlook on it. Another thing is just being, and this is sometimes very hard to do with a fast-moving company, but just get agreement up front on what the strategy is, and get it in writing in some sort of brief, so you can go back to it and say, like, we agreed we talked about this before. Now this is off strategy, or this is not meeting the goals that we originally set out to do. Now, if we want to change those, that's great, but then we have to kick out the deadline as well, because you're essentially making a new project, right?
That's really helpful advice.
Yeah.
This also relates to another question we have in the chat. If we can I feel like it's related directly to what you just said. So someone asked, how do you create continuity in your design and marketing efforts when you work with so many outside agencies and freelancers? And I feel like it really relates to what you were just speaking to.
Yeah, I mean, especially agencies, they're going to do a big chunk of work. I'll often go in there and just review the brand guidelines. I mean, brand guidelines are brand guidelines, but I'll try to speak about these, this emotional part of it, just so they kind of feel it in their bones, because if I handed the brand standards to 10 different designers, I would get 10 different looks and feels, right? And to a certain extent, that's okay. I mean, brand standards should be loose enough to allow for a little bit of wiggle room. But one thing they can't veer from is that kind of core central tenet of the brand, right? Because it violates the brand as a person, right? That's not what the brand would do. So going to an agency and getting all the leaders and designers and everybody in the room and kind of explaining it through that lens is really helpful. So they can have a little bit of freedom in design, but still understand the direction that it needs to go. Yeah, so it's a trade-off. It's you have to be flexible enough. I mean, if you're too strict, then you'll never get anything done. But yeah, they need to understand those underlying themes.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective, I think, on branding. And it's what's so fun about it, just how you keep coming back to talking about the brand personality and like the core of the brand and who they are.
Yeah,
that's like a great thing to just have in the back of your mind as you're working, like whatever company you're working at, if you're in-house or even if you're setting the tone for
absolutely.
Company.
Yeah, I'm very design with the gut, a lot of intuition. I don't like rote anything. So yeah, just kind of feeling it and then designing is the way I work.
And this just came up in the chat because you're really engaging people with this conversation.
Oh, so, good. I love talking about it. We can talk about it all day.
So someone asked, do you have any experience with brand archetypes? Do you use them when you're establishing brand personalities?
Like you're talking about like personas or things of that nature?
Yeah, I think it's a familiar concept that I've heard of, but I don't practice it, so I was curious if you.
I think I understand, but going back to that YP example, we had that persona or that archetype of the household CEO, right? That person that's getting things done in the house and the finances and all that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, having to or digging in and understanding the customer, and being able to switch to that customer mindset when you're in a meeting with senior leaders or whatever. You can bring that in and say, well, the customers that we're after, they wouldn't do that, or they would prefer it this way, or why don't we think about it from the customer's point of view? So yeah, it's definitely a way to kind of pull people back to reality, because sometimes when you're working internally, you kind of get entrenched and you get the blinders on, and you can't see things from the customer's point of view. So it helps to those things help to kind of ground you and pull you out.
So I think we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to leave room for some of the Q&A that we still kept. So I just want to wrap up with one question, last question from us. So I understand you talked about how you have side projects, and I was curious if you could share a little bit about your side passion and how it relates to what's behind you right now.
Oh yeah, I've always been into portrait photography and photography in general. I've got, I don't know, behind me like a slew of cameras, from like old large format cameras to medium format. I'm just everything, film, digital, all kinds of stuff, even Polaroids, whatever. Love them. So I've always done portrait photography. I'm pretty active on Instagram over at Jay Musselwhite. I post a lot of my portrait work. Oh yeah, and there's that one. This one was a finalist for the CA photography annual last year. And I paint the backdrops as well, but I have a side business where I paint backdrops for other portrait photographers. So it all kind of works together. I use my photography Instagram account to capture photographers, and then I send them over to my Franklin backdrops, and then they get a backdrop, and then so it's a big, nice little marketing cycle there. So yeah, side passion, painting and photography, and then do sketching, and I play a little piano badly, very badly. And yeah, it's just one of those things you've got to have. You got to have those things that you work on outside of work that keep that creative muscle going, because if you're anything like me, you're just there's an overflow, and if you don't have that release valve, then just it doesn't work.
Agreed. It's so important to have side passions, and that is a beautiful backdrop. I'm an oil painter myself, so I just had a comment on the shading. It's beautiful, your brush strokes.
Thank you very much. It's in acrylic.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah.
Did the painting come first in your life, or the photography?
Photography was first. Yeah. So
Cool.
I got like my first camera was when I was like 5 or 6. It was old Kodak, and I wore that thing out and like begged my mom and dad to buy me another one, and they bought me another one, and I've always had a camera, and yeah. And then maybe over the past 10 years, I've really gotten serious about portrait photography, and the backdrops and lighting, and staging, and all of the things that go into it. Do a lot of color grading and post work in Photoshop. That's kind of my forte, kind of my thing.
Awesome. So I'm going to switch over to the Q&A portion in the last about 12 minutes that we've got.
Sure.
So this might seem a little whiplashy because it's from a couple of points in our conversation. So the first one, someone is curious about the agencies that you work with at FLEETCOR. So I don't know if you're able to share who they are, or if you can just share about why you choose to work with them, like what aspects of them.
Yeah, so it really does depend on the internal budgets, and I can't share with you everybody that we work with, but it's a good mix of established agencies with smaller shops and some freelancers. We even work with TCG as well, but like I was saying earlier, agencies and freelancers and whatnot, they're tools at your disposal, and each of them have their strong suits. So you try to match up what you need with what you have to work with. Yeah.
Makes sense. So this next one is about your work at YP. So I'm just going to read it exactly because it's someone's very specific experience. And you may see it in the chat too. So she says, I have to work with legal trademark a lot to protect the brands that she works with around the world. Do you have any best practices with collaborating with these multifunctional counterparts?
Ooh, that's a big, broad question. In what aspects? I will say working with legal and trademark is oftentimes, we often butt heads because legal will want to shoot down anything, and legal only likes things that are pristine and there is zero liability. But unfortunately, that doesn't leave you a lot of room for being creative. Oftentimes it just comes down to, making an end around, going to leadership and stating your case, or going directly to legal and say, look, this is what we're trying to accomplish. I realize that there are some risks, but really, what are the risks? Are you being overly cautious, or are you can we meet halfway? So yeah, and looking at the comment, yeah, they are very risk averse. So you have to kind of draw them out of their shell. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's definitely one of the more difficult aspects of the job.
Gotcha. And then the last question, it's a vague one, but maybe it's like an intuitive one you can answer. So what is your take on being a leader and a mentor? Right? Yeah.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I've always been, very independent minded. I've done a lot of freelance. I've done a lot of things on my own. As I've kind of matured and grown, I've had to let go of wanting to be in control of everything. That's kind of that's a hurdle for me. And I'm getting better, but like managing people and the people aspect of it is definitely kind of the last frontier of management. It's difficult. It's difficult to manage different personalities and being able to and get the best out of people, especially nowadays with COVID and everybody's working remotely. I'm much better in person in an office environment where I can see people and read people, and like it goes back to that kind of intuitive way of expressing. So I can look at someone and I can read their body language, but you can't do that when you're on a Zoom, although I try to, but yeah, that's does that sort of answer the question, I guess?
I think that works for sure. And that was our last question.
Yeah, I will add and say that I've been very lucky to have worked with some really great people, and there are a lot of great designers, great creative directors, great, business people that aren't necessarily that may be design adjacent, that make great mentors. But yeah, I mean, those relationships, at least I found now later in my career, those relationships that I kind of started early and just have grown over the years, those are the most rewarding ones. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just reach out and get to know people.
And Jay, if someone wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way?
Like I said, I'm active on Instagram. You send me a message on Instagram. I'm there. You can also email me if you want. My email is j.musselwhite@jaymus.com. That's JAYMUS.com. So yeah, but Instagram, Jamus5. Here's another question. What brands are you most impressed by today? What about their work stands? One recently that I really love is Noom. Do you guys know Noom? It's like the app that, and I've lost about 20 or 30 pounds off Noom, but it's an app that lets you track like what you eat, and the content's great. They kind of teach you like the science behind how your body processes food and how it uses food and why you should eat this, right? So it's not like just eat this and you'll lose weight. It's, kind of teaches you to do it. But I originally signed up for the app because they had an awesome Instagram ad, and I clicked on the Instagram ad, and just the experience of how they kind of drew me down into the product was awesome, and I loved it, and I signed up right away. Partly just because I love the way they did it. Yeah, and they have a lot of whoever writes for that app. They really do a good job. So yeah, Noom is one of those good ones. I still use TurboTax. I'm still amazed at like the UX behind that, how they could take something so complicated and make it pretty easy to go through and do your taxes. That gets 5 gold stars in my book. That's got to be a challenge. So yeah, there's lots of great brands out there.
Yeah. I feel like you said earlier, we could chat about branding and all the nerdy stuff all day. So if anyone else has further questions or wants to have a really specific brand conversation, reach out to Jay on LinkedIn, Instagram, his website. Because we're at the top of the hour, and I want to relinquish you all back to your work days or your projects or your life. But yeah, thank you so much, Jay, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. It's been so great talking with you and just learning about all your experiences.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You guys enjoy your Wednesday.
You too. Well, we'll see you next month for the next AIGA Atlanta Insider. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.